Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar or webcast on customizing KWIZCom forms using your own styles. My name is Ken Vieira, and I am the Product Development Manager at KWIZCom. I'm responsible for the development lifecycle of all our products, and I've been working with SharePoint since 2003. A little bit about KWIZCom before we get started. KWIZCom is an ISV. That was founded in 2005. It has 60 plus SharePoint add-ons and Office 365 apps, over 7,000 clients worldwide, and it's headquartered in Toronto, Canada. If you want to find out more about KWIZCom and the products that we offer, please visit www.kwizcom.com. The agenda for today is actually rather simple. I don't want to get too deep into how to customize forms. I just want to give you a general idea on how it's done. It is a developer track, so for this webcast, I'm going to assume that you are familiar with HTML, CSS, CSS files, and how to apply CSS rules to an HTML page, because that is the focus of this webcast. To start off, I'm going to introduce you to the KWizCom Forms app really quickly. More specifically, one of the features of the KWizCom Forms app, the Field Groups feature. I'm going to talk about how the KWizCom Forms app makes it easier to customize your forms. I'm then going to dive into using CSS to customize the look and feel of fields inside forms. Then I'm going to go into using CSS to customize the look and feel of forms for specific lists. And then finally, and also using CSS to customize the look and feel of a form when a user decides to print. Then finally, using CSS to customize forms that use tabs or accordion view. So how does the KWizCom Forms app make it easier to customize your form style and look? Well, the KWizCom Forms app has a feature called the Field Groups feature. And what this feature does is it allows you to arrange your form fields in groups, configure how these groups will be displayed, and set permissions for the group. So in the Field Group feature inside the Forms app, you are able to create groups that have specific fields in them and display those groups as either a tab view or an accordion view. There are also other things you can do with that Field Groups feature. I'll show you that in a second. Anytime you install the KWizCom Forms app, a CSS file is added to the site assets library. Now, the reason initially the CSS file is blank, and the reason we add the CSS file is so that you can use it to get up and running with customizing your form's look and feel. And the core of this presentation is around using the CSS file to customize forms. Once the file is in the site assets library, anytime an edit form or display form or a new item form or a view is rendered, this CSS file is registered to the page and the styles in it are immediately applied to the page. This is all done automatically for you. So those are the three initial ways that the Forms app makes it easier for you to customize your forms. Let me just show you these three things live so that you can get an understanding of what I mean. I have a site here that just has a generic order list called orders. As soon as you install the KWizCom Forms app, you are presented with, in the ribbon, with a KWizCom Forms button that allows you to configure the form settings. If you go into the KWizCom Forms settings, you'll see that there are a suite of sub-features or sub-apps associated with the KWizCom Forms app. The feature we're going to be talking about specifically today is the Field Groups feature. As I said, the Field Groups feature allows you to arrange your fields in groups. So if I were to go to the normal edit form for this orders list, you would see that it's the generic SharePoint edit form. But I can quickly change the look and feel of this form using the field groups feature. For example, if I wanted to quickly change the caption location, I could just make the field caption above the field, and if I were to hit refresh, you see now that the captions are above the field. Say I wanted to move these captions into caption icons or info icons. I could just go here, take that, move the field description location to an info icon, hit apply, and now when I go back, you'll see that that caption is now in a nice little call out. In addition, those are like nice little touches, but the main purpose for the field groups feature is being able to create groups. So if I were to create a group called group 1 and add 2 fields to it, one being the title and the other being the status details, and then create another group called group 2 and add 4 fields: the order date, the order status, the product, and the quantity, and now hit apply and select that the groups be shown in tabs view, and I refresh this form, I now have a tab view. So I've customized the look and feel of this form using the field groups feature inside the Forms app. And as you can see, it's nicely rendered. There's no heavy lifting for you. You just merely use the field groups feature and you're off and running. I can even add an all fields group. So if I go back and I'm having trouble finding a field, I can just go to all fields and they're listed right there. So that's the basic functionality of the field groups feature. You can even, and if you wanted to, you could actually add conditions to each group and say, only show this group if the current user is equal to, I don't know, administrator, let's say. So we can call that the administrator group. Well, it's really slow right now. Oh, there it is. So this field will only be shown to the wingtip administrator. Everybody else won't get to see this group if I want. That's just one way to set permissions on groups and how they're visible. Right now, I'm going to clear these settings for the purposes of our demos and keep going forward. All right, so I've cleared those settings. Now if I go back to the form, you'll see that the groups are gone. We're right back to the standard SharePoint form. Nothing's been changed in terms of style or look, and we're right back where we started before we started using the field groups feature. Let's get back into our presentation. So the last way that the Forms app makes it easier to customize your form style and look is that whenever a form is rendered, whether it be a view, an edit, edit item, display item, or view item form, new item form, the Forms app adds additional CSS classes and HTML attributes that can be used in CSS Rules to target field controls, field rows, form tables, groups, tabs or accordions, sections, and the print view. So anytime a form is rendered, we start adding all this extra information to the form that you can use to target specific field rows or specific groups and target specific lists. Let me just show you what that information looks like or that data looks like live. Okay, so if I were to go and look at this list that was just rendered, you would see that there's this, field internal name, field title's been added. If you go to the actual web part zone, the template type, you have the list ID added, the form, what kind of form this is, what the list title is. You have all this extra information available, and because we store this information as HTML attributes, you can now target specific or scope your CSS rules to target specific lists or fields. We also add additional classes like this one, for example, that you can use in CSS Rules. So I'm going to go back and continue from the current slide, and I'm going to go to the next slide. So what are the HTML attributes that we add for fields, if you want to target fields? So let's talk about using CSS to customize the look and feel of specific fields. the following attributes are added. We add the field internal name, the field title, the field type, the field ID, whether or not the field is required, and whether or not the field is a read-only field. For the field type, there's actually an enumeration available that gives you all the possible values. So let me just show. Once you get the presentation, you'll be able to go to this link. But just let me show you that link real quick. Here it is. So these are all the possible values for form type. But as of right now, the Forms app only runs in display form, edit form, new form, and view. There may be support for other forms, but right now we only support those 4. So let's continue. So I showed you what the HTML attributes look like. Let me show you that again. So a standard field row is just a standard HTML row. It's a row that contains a field label and a field control inside a form. But once the form is decorated with our additional CSS classes and HTML attributes, it becomes much more verbose. You get much more detail. You know that this row is the row gets all the attributes are added to the field row. So you know that the row is for a particular field name with a particular title. There's what the type of field it is, what the field ID is, whether or not the field is required, whether or not the field is a read-only field, and we add the class, the field row class to it. So now these rows have all these extra HTML attributes, and because they have these attributes, you can use them as CSS rules. How would that work exactly? Well, here's an example. This is a very simple CSS rule. It's taking a table row that has an attribute of field where the field type equals text. This CSS rule targets text field rows and sets their background color to antique white. So, but it's only going to do this for text fields. So anytime a form is rendered, say the edit form, for example, the CSS rule is going to target all the field rows where the field type is equal to text. So now I can instantly color all text fields the same color if I wanted to. And this will affect all forms that are rendered. Now if I go to the next slide, I'll show you another example. We could do the same thing for number fields. So say we wanted to make all number fields have the actual value of the field be blue. We could do that as well. This CSS rule right here targets all number field values, so the MS form body, and sets their color to blue. And this will work across all lists in that site. So let's get into some demos, because throwing up a CSS rule and saying it will do it isn't going to quite capture how easy it is to do. So I'm going to go just do a quick demo on customizing the look and feel of specific fields. So I'm going to go back into my site, and I'm going to show you the CSS file that gets added to every page. So whenever you render a form, we include a CSS file for you, and I'll show you where it lives. Here. So this CSS file right here gets added. Right now it's blank. It just has a bunch of comments in it. We're going to modify the CSS file and upload it to where it lives. It lives in the site assets library. So let me just go to the actual site assets library and show you how you get there. So you go to the site assets, there's a folder called KWizCom, then there's a folder called APLFE. That's the product code for the KWizCom Forms app. And we have a CSS file in there called KWizCom APLFE controller. And you can see that it is getting registered to the page. Now, I haven't used the KWizCom Forms app to customize this form at all, but immediately this CSS file is available. It's empty, it isn't doing anything, but we're going to change that. Let's see how we would go about doing that. So I'm going to open a CSS file I have on my desktop in Visual Studio. So here it is. Here's that same file, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can actually read what hopefully that's big enough. Maybe a little bigger. Yes. Okay, so let's start targeting some fields. Let's start changing the look and feel of some fields. I said that in order to customize the look of a text field and make the background color antique white, I would use a rule like this. So I'm taking all table rows that are for field type text and making their background color white. So now all I have to do is take this file that I just modified, drop it in the Site Assets library, replace the existing file, and if I refresh this form, I expect all the text fields to have an antique white background. Let's take a look. Now, this is one list. If I were to go to another list and do the same thing, you'll see that indeed all text fields have an antique white background color. Let's see if this list has any text fields. Yes, the title field. So all text fields now have an antique white background color. And all I did was I took this CSS file that I saved, I dropped it in my Site Assets library, I refreshed the form, and we're up and running. We've customized the look and feel. But that's just the field type. What if we wanted to target other attributes? Say, for example, whether or not the field is required. Well, we could do that as well. So we really want to highlight the fact that the field is required. So this rule will work. You would say, I want all field rows that are for required fields, set to true, field required equals true. I want the label and the body. So the label is for the name of the field and the form body is for the value of the field. I want to set their background color to light coral. So this rule, very simply, I've saved the CSS file. I'm going to drop in the Site Assets library. And I'm going to refresh. And if I go to this form, all required fields are now highlighted in that light coral color. It isn't pretty, but it really makes it obvious that it's highlighting the required fields. I can go to any list now, and all required fields will look the same because I've customized with that CSS file. There are no required fields on this list. I wonder if order tasks has any required fields. I think the title is required. Let's take a look. Yes, there you go. See? So now, effectively, all lists, the required fields, will have a light coral background color. That's pretty cool. What if we wanted to do something stylish instead of something so bold? Say we wanted, right out of the box, we want alternating row colors. So again, make use of CSS rules. I'm basically saying I want all field rows. I can use the class here, so it's not targeting all table rows, but specifically field rows. And so this class, and I'm saying every even field row, I want you to color it antique white. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to drop it in the Site Assets library. I'm going to go to my orders list. Actually, I can just refresh this one. And you'll see that now there's alternating colors. I can do the same thing with orders. It's global. There's no doubt about it. See, all the even rows, so the second, fourth, and sixth row are antique white. That's pretty awesome. So what are the attributes you can target? There's a lot of them, but I'll show you that slide again. All the attributes you can target, there's a lot of them. Oops, that's not the slide I want to go to. Sorry, 1 second. Here they are. So you can target fields based on internal name, title, type, ID, whether or not it's required, or whether or not it's a read-only field. Awesome. You can get, just with that, you're able to do so much with field names. The ability to target field names based on internal name or ID, you can be really specific about the fields that you're targeting and how you're styling them. Now, you can also do the same thing with lists. You could target lists and scope your CSS rules to lists. Again, we add a bunch of metadata. To each list form, we add the title, the template type name, the ID of the list, the base type name, and the form type. Now, again, there's a lot of values available for the template type and template type name. I've included links to them, but I'll show you again what the available template type names are. So let me go, here it is. These links are all included in the presentation, so once you get it, you'll be able to follow them. So here are the names of all the list template types that you can use to target specific list templates. And here are all their number values. So when you're doing this and you're trying to apply rules, remember the list template type is the number, and the list template type name is the string, or the string version of it. So these two, the list template type and list template type name, represent the same thing. Just one's a number and one's a string. And you can look up both values here. Some lists, list template types don't have a number value, so they'd be undefined. So you'd have to use the template type name. Anyways, and those are the values. You can find those values online. They're included in the presentation, and so that you can look them up and start targeting them. So now that we know what the additional HTML attributes are, we can now start targeting lists and styling specific lists. How do these list attributes change the look of a list? Well, a generic list or a list form is just a div that has a form table and field rows inside it. But once we render once the KWizCom Forms app is installed, we add the attributes to that container, that form. And what we do is we add the list ID, the list title, the form type, the base type, the template type name, and base type name. So what does that look like live? If I were to show you right here, if I go to this list and I look at the web part that's containing it, so it's this whole thing highlighted on the left, you'll see all those properties are added. The list template type, list base type, list title. And what does that mean to us? That means we can now start targeting this specific list. We can get really focused. So let's try that. We can start scoping our CSS rules to this list. So let's look at some examples. So here is an example of targeting a list by template type name. I want to target tasks with timeline and hierarchy. And I want to make their background color white. So I want any time a view, an edit, a display, or a new item form is rendered, I want the background color of this specific template, or a list based on this specific template, to be colored antique white. I could do that with this rule right here. What it's basically saying is, any element that has the list template type name equal to tasks with timeline and hierarchy, set the background color to white. That could be a view, a new, an edit, a display, form. Let's take, and what if I wanted to target based on title and form type? I can combine attributes to further scope the CSS rules. So this rule right here is saying this rule targets all lists with title orders and sets the background color of their edit forms to antique white. So now we're not targeting all forms. We're targeting just the edit form in the orders list. Let's see this live, because it's really interesting. Combining attributes into CSS rules. So let me go into my demo mode. Just let me minimize this, and let me open my CSS file, and let's look at some examples. So let's look at the first example. I want to make all tasks, all lists based on the tasks with timeline and hierarchy template to have a background color of white, antique white. So that's all I would do right here. That's it. I'm adding a little padding here just to make the view a little bit bigger, but this is the core of it. So I'm going to put this in my site assets library. I'm going to hit replace, and now I'm going to refresh this. So this is my orders form. My orders form shouldn't be affected because my orders form is based on a generic list. Let's take a look and see if I'm right. So it's still white in the background. It's not antique white. But if I go to my order tasks, you'll notice right away that the view is now all antique white. If I go to the edit item, it's also antique white. I've effectively changed the background color for all the forms based on a specific template to a color. Now, that isn't an amazing example, but it is quite powerful if you think about it, because you can now make it very obvious what kind of list you're in. You can make tasks lists antique white. You can make generic lists a light Alice blue, and you can give the ability to differentiate forms based on color. So let's keep going. Let me show you an example where I combine attributes to target. So I want to make sure that this is really obvious, this next example. So right now this view is antique white because the rule we just applied, and the edit form is the view form is also antique white, and the edit form is antique white. So we've effectively modified the background color for all the forms for this list. Let's just target edit forms, and all I would do is I would just say, I would add an additional property here called form type, and I would set it to equals edit form. Now, what are the available values for edit form? I think I've already shown you, but I'll show you again. Page type, again, it's these 4 values: display form, edit form, new form, and view. I want the edit form to be the only one that has an antique white background. So I'm going to save the file. I'm going to move it into the site assets library. I'm going to refresh, and you're going to see that this is no longer antique white. And there you go. Let me go into the edit form, and you will, the view form, also not antique white anymore. And now let me edit the form, and you will see the edit form is the only one that's been affected. And it's because we added this additional property to the CSS rule. And it can get pretty elaborate. Like, you can use all the CSS selectors and make these rules pretty complicated. For example, like say I wanted all the forms to be antique white, but not views. I could use this rule. So I'll say I want my list template type that I'm targeting to be the tasks with timeline and hierarchy, but I don't want views. I don't want to apply to where the form type is equal to view. So if I go back, and just to make sure that it's accurate, I'll show you again. So views are not colored. The view item is not colored right now. But if I take the CSS file that I just saved, put it in here, and refresh the view item form, you'll see that it is. And the edit item form, also. The view, not affected. So this rule is applying to everything, but not where the form type is equal to view. It's pretty awesome. And let me show you the new item, actually, as well. Same thing. So now we have another rule where we're combining things and making use of all these CSS selectors. And we're targeting specific lists. But we could take it even a step further. We can now start targeting fields inside specific lists. So say, for example, I wanted to make the order tasks list. I want all the text fields inside the order task list to have a color of antique white. So now I'm using the list title to target as a way of scoping, and I'm targeting text fields. And I'm going to show you this works as well. I'll put it in the site assets library. I'll hit replace. I'm going to refresh this, and we are targeting the order task lists. So if I were to edit this right now, you will see that this is antique white. But if I go to the orders list, which is not a task list, is just a generic list, you'll see that the title field is not affected. And let me show you what actually in the developer toolbar is what the rule looks like. So you can see that if I were to highlight this row right here, you'll see that our rule is right here and it's being applied. And because of the beauty of the Chrome developer toolbar, I can actually edit this live and even show you a few more examples. Like I could switch this to number. Now the percentage, you can see the percentage complete is highlighted over here. I guess just change this to lookup, and there's no lookup. What about user? There's a user field highlighted. What about date time? See, the date time fields are now highlighted. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, there's a note field. Let's see if I can. The description field is a note field. So now the note field is highlighted. What about a choice field? Choice. See, now the choice fields are highlighted. Again, it's And you can actually do all your modifications in here, copy it, and apply it to your CSS files later. But once again, I am targeting a specific field in a specific list. If I go to any other form or in another list, it's not being targeted anymore because that rule is not scoped to this list. It's scoped to the order tasks list, which is based on a specific list template. Oh, sorry, a list title. So again, you can even use instead of the list title, you can use the field ID, or you can use the base type. Say you want to target all lists that are based on the document library base type. You could do that as well. You just have to know what the enumerations are, and again, you'll have a link to those values here. Let me keep going. So I've shown you how to target specific lists and fields in specific lists. Now I'm going to show you how to target the print view. So anytime the KWIZCom Forms app is installed, you get this additional print button added to the form. When you click the print button, a print view of the current form is constructed for you. Initially, the view is very generic. It's very plain, and but it's very legible. Again, if you want to make it fancier, you can, and that's what we're going to do now. Now, the print view can be styled the same way the edit form, the new form, the display form, and the view forms are styled. You use the same CSS selectors and the HTML attributes, but you scope them using a print-only CSS class. And what does that look like? Let's take a look. So here's an example of a CSS rule that is scoped to the print view that targets all form tables. And what this is saying is, when you print, I want you to put a border around the form table. I want it to be solid gray, and I want it to have additional padding. You can also use the field type in the print view. You can say this particular rule is saying, when you print in the print view, I want all text fields to be color red. I want them to be colored red. I want the actual value of the text to be red. So let's see that live. Let's see how we can do that. So again, back into our CSS file. I'm going to pull up the examples for the print, and I'm going to put in a pretty big some CSS rules, and here I'm going to go over them with you real quick. So again, all these rules are now scoped with this print-only class. And what I can do, the first one is saying any form table, I want it to have a gray border. All text fields, I want them to be red, I want them to be bolder, and I want them to be bigger. Any number fields, I want them to be blue, I want them to be bolder, and I want them to be slightly larger than the default font. So if I take this rule, if I take the CSS file, put it in the site assets library. Oh wait, maybe I should have shown you the I'm not going to upload it actually. Let me show you what the default print looks like. Let me show you the default print looks like before we style it. Sorry, let me just go into the view item. So here's the button that we add, the print button, and this is what it looks like initially. It's pretty plain, but it's very legible. It makes a legible version of the form. But let's now add let's add some CSS to it. So this is what it looked like before, and once we add this, see right now the title is still gray. I wish I could zoom in a little bit more, and the number field is also gray. If I were to refresh and hit print now, you'll see that the title field is now a giant red color. There's a giant red font, and the number field is bigger and blue, which is what we specified. So you can take this further. You can make the individual labels bigger. You can make certain fields underlined. You can add a background image. There's a bunch of things you can target now, and to make this form look exactly the way you want it to look. You can even add maybe a header image if you wanted to. This view, actually you can't really see it because it's hidden behind here. These rules will only get applied when you print. and that's because I'm using this. I'm scoping it to this print class. It is quite powerful. Say for example, what else can I do with this? I want only lookup fields. I want the the rows for lookup fields to have a border of gray, and I will take out all the other ones, and I'll say that, and I'll drop it in there. Does it have a lookup? Yeah, it does have a lookup. Just make sure that's, and I'll hit replace. If I refresh this and hit print, I'm expecting only the product lookup to have a border around it. Oh, nope, mistake. What did I do wrong? Is it a lookup field? Hold on, let's make sure that it is a lookup field. Oh, jeez. Oh, no. Oh, come on. It is lookup. Did I type lookup incorrectly? Oh, did I save it? Replace. Refresh. Oh, not working. Wonder why that is. Let's see. Oh, I just did the CSS selector incorrectly. You don't put the border on a row, you put a border on the cells in the row. My apologies. Let me fix that and put it in here. And let's do a refresh and hit print. There you go. Now the lookup field has a border around it. And you can make it look better than that, but this is just to give you an example that you can do pretty much anything you want. And you can scope it to any field or list. And once you start using tabs and groups, you can actually scope it to the specific groups as well. So let's go on to that in the presentation. So whenever a tab or accordion view is rendered inside a edit, new, or display form, we decorate the section, the tabs with the group name, so that if you wanted to, you could scope your CSS classes to that group. Here's an example of doing that. So I want to say that the group toggle, tab toggle, I want the group name to be, I want to target the group where group name is equal to group 1, and I want to set the background color to red. So what's this doing? This is basically saying I want all tabs that have a group name of 1 to have a background color of red. Here's another example. These particular rules, what they're doing is I want all tab contents for groups named group 2 to have a background color of orange, and I want the tab color to also be orange when it's active. But when it's not active, just go back to the default color. So let's take a look at what this looks like live. First, we have to go back into, let's go to orders. Let's set up our tabs first. Let's set up our tabs. And let's start styling these tabs, and I'll show you how you can use the group name property. So let's do this. So let's go group 1. Let's recreate those groups we had before. I want the title, and I want the status details. And then I want to go group 2. And I want to add 4 fields once again, and I want it to be the order date, the order status, the product that we're dealing with, and the quantity of the order. I'll just hit save. Now I'll go back into the orders list. I'll edit that item, and what do you have? You have these 2 groups that we just finished defining. Now let's take our example and start styling these specific groups. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to just paste these rules, the rules that we already talked about, and I'm going to say I want the background color for the toggle when it's not active, so when it's not the selected tab, to be red, and I want it to be orange. I want the group 2 to be have the content to be orange, and the toggle to be orange when it's red. orange when it's active. So let's see what that looks like live. It's kind of hard to look at it in terms of CSS rules. It's better to look at it live. Okay, so as you can see, the group 1 is normal when it's active. So this is the active group, group 1. And we said we want it when it's not active to be red. So let's take a look at that and see if it's right. So if I click on group 2, what happens? Group 1 is now not active, so it turns red. And group 2, I want group 2 to be orange when it is active. And now we have an orange group. So what we could do here is basically color each group tab a different color. So that you know, for example, the product details always in the green tab. The current order details, the order details group is always in the yellow tab. You could actually have a rainbow of tabs, and it'd be easier to find certain tabs because they're always the same color. Or you could just keep it the generic way. And just make it fit better with your theme. Here's another example using tabs. I'm just going to put this in here. And this example is a little bit more elaborate. And what I'm saying is I can actually transform the way the tab text looks as well. Make the font bolder only when it's active. And change the color only when it's active. So if I take this and I put it in here and I hit refresh, the active tab will be red. It's now uppercase and bolder. I can do things like that. But these are pretty basic examples. What if I wanted to actually target a text field inside a group? I could do that as well. I could say, I just go find the selector that I want. So I will go here and I'll say, I want to target this group. So the class I'm targeting is this class, and I'm targeting the attribute group name equals group 1. So I can say now, target the content group where group name is equal to group 1. And what I want you to do is target the fields, rows, where the field type is equal to text. And I want you to, so if you have a text field inside a group called group 1, I want their background color to be light coral. So now if I upload this file, I expect the group 1, the title field, to have a light coral background color. Let's put this in here. Let's refresh the page. And these are both text fields. So the title field is a text field, because if you look at the attributes, 1 second, you'll see that it's a text field, which is listed right here. But the status details is also a text field, which is listed right here. And you'll notice that none of the other group isn't affected because there are no text fields. What if I wanted instead to just target required fields, which we did before? I can combine that with the group and say field required, and I can say true. I'll just take this, put it in here. If I refresh, now just the required fields will have a light coral background color. And I go in here, and notice how group 2 wasn't affected, because this rule is scoped to group 1. Right? If I wanted to target both, I could just copy the rule, and I'll say group 2. I want group 2 to have light green for required fields. And again, I'm going to take this, put it in here, replace it. I'm going to hit refresh, and group 1, light coral required fields. Group 2, light green required fields. And again, you can start targeting anything you want, because we've given you multiple levels you can scope your rules to. You can scope your rules to a specific field based on type, a title, ID, whether or not it's required, whether or not it's a read-only field, and you can target lists based on list title, whether or not the list ID, the list template, and the base type, and you can start targeting form types as well. Like I could have entered in here that I only want this to happen on edit forms. Again, all I'd have to do is say, so let's get rid of the coral and only do that on the edit form. So let me first show you that it's working in the display form. So let me just go look at the view item form or the display form. You'll see still this is the display form. Now we're not in edit, and the required fields are still getting highlighted. But that's not very useful in a display form. So let's scope this to the edit form. Let's say star, which is any element that has a form type equal to edit form that has a group. So I'm going to scope all these elements to just the highlights just to the edit form. Oh, I spelled that incorrectly. There we go. Let's save. Let's upload. And what do you get? I think this should disappear. And it did. Now that's not highlighted. But if I were to edit, it's now highlighted for you. Again, look at all the levels we're scoping to. We're scoping to a particular form, to a particular group, and to metadata on a particular field. So we're targeting only required fields inside groups called group 1 inside edit forms. You could take this as far as you want. You could have CSS rules that are so complex and so scoped that you're targeting just fields inside lists with particular IDs. It's quite powerful when you start to play with it, and you could do all the same customizations for the print. And that's what is possible using the Forms app, the Field Groups feature, and CSS. I want to have a quick word about one more thing that I want to point out that could be useful to you when you start to use the Forms app. There's a feature in SharePoint called the theming engine, which allows you to create theme CSS files and compose looks. You could actually start to use, you don't have to use our CSS file that we put in the site assets library. We put that file in there for you just to get you up and running really quickly. It's a really easy file to access. It's just in the site assets library. We automatically register it to the page for you, but you can start using the theming engine. And an example of using the theming engine, I don't know if I could do a full example, but the theming engine is quite powerful because it allows you to do things like this. So I want active tab toggles to have a background color of white. But if the theme that's currently being used has the page background defined, use that color instead. So now whenever you switch themes, this CSS file, if it's a theme CSS file that's included with your theme, will at runtime replace this white color with the page background color if it's defined in your theme. It's actually quite powerful. It's pretty amazing what can be done. I think I actually do have an example set up. Let me put an empty CSS. Let me empty this out and show you where that CSS file lives. So I'm gonna empty this out and get rid of all of our funny settings, and I want to switch to. I want to show you first of all where the file lives in the site collection. So any site or site collection will have a style library, and in the style library there's a folder called themable. Now, if you include a CSS file that's themable, which I have here. Here's one I've created. Now I'm going to open the CSS file. you'll see what it just looks like this. Let me zoom in. Again, it's basically, I want all active toggles to have the default color of white. But if the current theme has a beige background defined, use that color instead. So let's see this live. Let's see this work. I'm going to switch themes, and I'm going to show you how this works for you. So I'm going to just go back into that site we were working on before. I'm going to change the look of the site, and I'm going to change it to the Sea Monster theme, which I've used to register, that has our theme CSS file that I showed you before registered to it. I'm going to hit working on it. Now, what SharePoint should be doing is going to that themable folder and creating a themed version of the CSS file that I just showed you. We should go a little quicker. A little quicker would be nice. Let me actually. Working on it still. Let me go. Okay, design preview, finally. Yes, keep it. And you go to Forms Active Team and show you that file one more time. I just want to make sure that you see what's happening here. It's actually a really powerful feature, and once you start customizing the look and feel of forms, it could be really useful to you. So there's this themable folder, and there's this file in it, and it has all these tokens and methods that you can use to replace default colors. So let's keep going. And now the theme should be applied. Yeah, it is applied. Why am I zoomed in so much? Okay, let's just zoom in a little. There we go. I'll go back to my orders form, and I'm going to edit it, and I want to show you something. So this tab normally has a white background color when it's active, but because we have that theme CSS file, I'll show you it here. Here it is. See how it's coming from the theme folder? It's been themed. So this file, let me put them side by side. One here and one here. So put this one here, and I'm going to put here. So what SharePoint does is at runtime, it takes this CSS file that's in the themable folder and converts it into this for you. Notice how the white color, close that, you zoom in, the default white color has been replaced with the theme page background color. And that's how the theming engine works. You could take the theme colors and apply them, and they get applied to a CSS file at runtime, and you're not going to have to statically put in the values. You can have the CSS. You can have this CSS file be pretty dynamic. The CSS file that we provide, that's in the site assets library, is just, again, it's just an empty file that you can use to get up and running. The best way to do it would be to create a theme CSS file, and you're gonna have to learn about the theming engine, and it's quite powerful. Like the ability to create a file like this where values get replaced with a theme color is quite powerful. And you can see that, again, this color, the color of this tab right here, and this is getting taken from the themed CSS file. And you should look up the theming engine and start using it to customize the look and feel of your sites, because it is quite amazing. So let me recap. The KWIZCom Forms app makes it really easy to customize the look and feel of your forms. And if you want to take it to the next level and start using theme CSS files, you can, or you can use the CSS file we create for you. My personal preference to get up and running is to use our CSS file, and then once you're happy with the look, turn it into a theme CSS file. Again, how to create a theme CSS file is out of the scope of this webcast, but it is a very powerful theming engine, and having the ability to replace all these colors with the appropriate theme colors at runtime is quite nice. Again, like taking something like this over here on the left. Why can't I make this bigger? Oh yeah, okay. Taking something like this way too big now. A little smaller, a little smaller. So taking something like this and having it turned into a CS file like this with the right colors at runtime is a really nice feature and something that should be better documented, and should be used more often. Anyway, that concludes the presentation. Hopefully it's been informative. It's been a pleasure having you guys join me today. I will be taking some questions, and if you have any further questions, please email me at kevin@KWizCom.com. Let me just put that up on the screen for you. And I'll try to reply as quickly as possible. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you joining the webcast. Have a great day.